Blaine, good morning. How are you today?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm doing my a few interviews prior to Thanksgiving here,
Yeah.
and so far it's a fantastic day. A lot of good conversations with CEOs. So you guys put out results from your drilling at the Chuchi Copper Gold Project on Monday morning. I want to delve into that first before we talk about the company more broadly, because you've actually been very active in 2024. You've had a lot of news flow. You've been advancing several projects simultaneously. But let's first talk about Chuchi. So, what are your big takeaways from the program uh, that happened over the summer?
Size, infrastructure, seasonality. So we like Chuchi for a long time. I mean, our flagship is Kliyul, and that's what we've devoted and spent more than 14 million bucks on since initially acquiring the option in 2020 and acquiring it outright last year. But Chuchi is a project we always had our eyes on. And luckily, I believe for us, we were able to enter into an agreement with Centerra in 2022. Now, why we always like Chuchi is because it is pretty advanced stage. I mean, historically, it's seen 89 drill holes and returned some pretty decent grade over some pretty decent intervals. But the historic drilling was pretty shallow, only about 150 meters vertical depth. And through our exploration, we saw or believed that we could continue to extend that, and we've done that. So this was our inaugural drill program this year. Again, why I like it, historically, it's returned some pretty decent numbers, but from an infrastructure standpoint, it's ideal. I mean, in north central BC, oftentimes you need to use a helicopter to access your projects. This one you can drive right on. It's only a 2-hour drive away from a small city called Fort St. James, and importantly, only 35 kilometers northwest of Centerra Gold's Mount Milligan. So infrastructure is great. You have a longer season because it's at a lower elevation. Historically, returned some good numbers that we thought we could grow, and we have. So it was our inaugural drill program. It was only 5 holes in over 2,700 meters, but we tested a 750-meter strike length and drilled down to 500 meters and intersected mineralization in all holes. And of the 5 holes we drilled, 4 of them were amongst the top 5. Only one historical hole was better than 4 of the holes we drilled this year. So we were pretty pleased with the program, and we look forward to getting back there in subsequent years.
Okay, so basically, all holes hit copper and gold this year. You had one hole in particular, hole 24074, that bottomed in higher grade. I mean, the grade sort of went up a little bit towards the end of the hole. What does that tell you? And what might that lead you to, if you go back there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it points us in the direction of a vector for a porphyry center, right? And that's why we drilled that hole. As through our drilling this year, we kind of zeroed in on that area, and that's the thesis. It would have been nice if we had the funds to keep drilling that hole, but we had to stop it short of target based on lack of funds. But yeah, very encouraging that you're intersecting higher grade mineralization towards the bottom of the hole. And I believe if you were able to keep going, you would have, perhaps stayed in that or even got into higher grade mineralization and perhaps even the porphyry core, which is what you're always looking for in these systems. But ultimately, it's just sort of proved out our thesis that we are in the upper levels of a very big copper gold porphyry system. So, you know, as I said, 89 historical holes. We completed 5 holes this year. Uh, we think this is a very big system. It's still relatively untested. It remains open laterally into depth, and ourselves or someone else is going to keep drilling this project out. And because of the infrastructure, I mean, I think you could build something here. I think this just requires horsepower through drilling to get there.
So you have good infrastructure, you have road access here. A lot of the ore body is near surface or closer to surface, But the drilling to date is showing you a vector that's deeper, and perhaps the potassic core, the real center of one of these porphyry intrusions is deeper there. And actually, in the news you put out on Monday morning, you show the sort of section map, the 600 meter wide zone there between the two porphyry stocks, and sort of that's where uh, it's leading you to as the vector. So sometimes with porphyries, you have to drill some deeper holes to really find it. And I mean deeper, I mean like 700 meters, 800 meters, maybe even 1,000 meters. Um, that seems to be what's next here, because you said you've got the top part of the system. You've got a grade shell above 0.2% copper equivalent, which is pretty good to be that close to surface. But to make this thing go, you probably need to punch a couple deeper holes and find that higher grade core. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, this is again first pass, and I think it helped us vector into the interpreted porphyry core. And I think that's exactly what would be next. Yeah, you got to stick in a few deeper holes, but I think we're certainly in the right vicinity. Yeah, I mean, I think you could test this thesis pretty quickly and pretty cheaply next year.
Okay. So that's on the plate for 2025. And then you guys flew ZTEM at the flagship project, which is much higher grade. And what really interests me there is that in 2023, you drilled a hole that again was increasing in grade the final 45 meters. It actually, the last 45 meters of hole KLI 23069 returned 45 meters of 0.58% copper equivalent. And what's interesting, when I looked at this news you put out on November 14th with the ZTEM sort of confirmed that hole, the last hole of the 2023 program, uh, is the vector. Like you have a
Yeah.
porphyry corridor that lit up in the ZTEM. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was I'm not going to say that was a surprise, but very nice that the ZTEM sort of confirmed our initial belief, understanding, thesis. I mean, that's we always felt that it was dipping to the north across the valley fault, and that's where that hole 69 was drilled, drilled to the north of the valley fault. A considerable depth. It was the deepest mineralized interval ever reported at the project. And yeah, the last 50 odd meters, the grade was increasing very, very much like we saw at Chuchi, which again leads you to believe that you're getting close to a porphyry core. And the ZTEM kind of confirmed that. So that just gives us a lot more confidence that future drilling at Kliyul should be focused in the north. We think again, based on the drilling, we thought we had a vector, and the ZTEM appears to confirm that. So you've got a lot of data that's kind of overlapping, pointing you in the direction, and that's where we would focus future drilling for sure at Kliyul. And one of the reasons why we did that ZTEM is because it is deeper. It's expensive, so you better be pretty darn sure that you're zeroed in your target before you start drilling it. And now we have a high degree of confidence that that's where we should be going, and that's what should be drilled next at Kliyul to really open it up. And when I say really open it up, I mean Kliyul is already quite large. I mean, 700 meters or 760 meters east west, 600 meters north south, and up to 550 meters vertical depth. So it already has pretty good dimensions. I always told people when we first acquired this project back in 2020 that I was pretty happy with the grades. I think we needed to grow it. Now it's kind of reversed. I'm pretty happy with the size. I think we need to increase the grade profile somewhat. And I think that future drilling could not only increase size, but also the grade profile. So it's very, very, if it's not already where it needs to be, it's very close. And when I tell people, our target always here was, a minimum 250 million tons breeding, approximately a 0.4, 0.5 copper gold equivalent. And I think it's very close to that. And if you're to drill across the north again in close proximity to hole 69 and going deeper, targeting that interpreted porphyry core, and you have success, I think that puts you over the line.
Yeah, so what's interesting to me about the KMZ, the main zone, is I have pretty high confidence you have at least 100 million tons there right now, just based upon the existing drilling, and it could be substantially larger. And just looking at some of the drill intercepts, I mean, 300 plus meters of 0.49% copper equivalent, 328 meters of 0.64% copper equivalent, 317 meters of 0.79% copper equivalent, 305 meters of 0.59% copper equivalent, 291 meters of 0.79% copper
There's
equivalent.
lots of good stuff, lots of great
Yeah,
intervals. No,
it's fantastic.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think, versus a Chuchi, Kliyul needs higher grades because of where it is, and right now it's helicopter accessible. Whereas a Chuchi, because it is road accessible, you can get by with lower grades. But in any event, I think Chuchi is very close to where it needs to be on the grade front. I think it can be significantly grown. And Kliyul, again, it is also very close to where it needs to be with respect to size and grade because of where it needs to be. So Kliyul needs to be better, and Chuchi is almost there.
Okay, so you took the year off to do the ZTEM, but this is your flagship. You're going
Yep.
back there in 2025, I'm assuming, and you got this vector to the north to northeast trending corridor, and the whole 69 at the end of 2023 left us on a cliffhanger. So you have a pretty, I imagine you have a pretty clear plan for what to do next. So what's the plan for 2025? You guys have advanced multiple projects simultaneously throughout 2024. You're a BC porphyry company. Obviously, the outlook for copper is pretty robust. We're staring at another big copper deficit of about 500,000 tons, TO with two N's, ES in 2025. So the copper price definitely has some tailwinds. What's the plan?
Yeah. Well, good question. I mean, when I came on as CEO in 2021, our goal was to become one of BC's leading copper gold exploration companies. And then we shifted to saying to become BC's leading copper gold exploration company because we are most certainly one of the leading. I mean, we have a fantastic portfolio of copper gold porphyry projects. Kliyul is a flagship. We just completed our inaugural drill program at Chuchi, and let's not forget about RDP. And then we have a couple more secondary projects. So we have a fantastic portfolio of projects. We're very fortunate that we own Kliyul 100%. Claims are in good standing for a decade. Very fortunate that we own RDP, which actually it hasn't seen as much drilling as either Kliyul or Chuchi, but has one drill hole was better than anything that we've seen from either Kliyul or Chuchi, and that requires a lot more work. That was a project we'd optioned out to Antofagasta. So, between Kliyul, RDP, and Chuchi, I think we're in very good shape. I think copper absolutely is the place to be, short term, medium term, long term. We continue to see a tremendous amount of interest in these porphyry projects in BC. We were talking earlier about American Eagle. I mean, what a great position they're in. I mean, first getting Teck, having great exploration success, then getting Teck as a corporate strategic, and now more recently South 32. So that is exactly where you want to be as a junior, having exploration success, having multiple corporate strategic investors, which provides that competitive tension. That's the path that we would love to be on. It's our goal to continue to try to find a corporate strategic investor for ourselves as a company. We would entertain potentially joint venturing some of our projects. We're continuing to look further afield. And one of the reasons we're doing that is that we have a really robust portfolio of porphyry projects in BC, and we own the majority outright, and the claims are in good standing for a decade. There are a few issues with that. One is obviously seasonality in BC. Infrastructure can sometimes be an issue. Permitting sometimes can be difficult. So I think it would be very complementary if we were to acquire some other copper, gold, porphyry projects in some other jurisdictions like the States, where seasonality isn't as much of an issue, infrastructure isn't much of an issue, permitting can be easier depending on the ground. So that is something that we are actively pursuing. And I don't think anybody should be surprised that if in the near future you see us make a number of acquisitions in the States. And again, I think that would be very complementary. It doesn't detract or take away from what we are trying to do is become a leading copper gold exploration company. We're just expanding our geographic horizon. Again, with those BC projects providing kind of an anchor point for valuation when you think about, well, listen, Antofagasta spent close to $4 million at RDP. We've spent $14 million at Kliyul. We own those assets 100%. And the claims are in good standing for a decade. That gives us the flexibility to look at some other projects that where we think we can add value and continue to examine where we're at on the BC projects. It wasn't that long ago that people were throwing money at us to advance these projects. This gives us the opportunity to kind of sit back for a little bit and kind of weigh our options as we continue to look for other opportunities.
So you got me very curious about the U.S. I'm very curious, and obviously I know there's probably only so much you can say, but let's see what you can say. Obviously I'm an American. I like Arizona a lot as a mining jurisdiction. I like
Our copper,
Idaho.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I like the state of Idaho a lot as a mining jurisdiction, both for gold, silver, and now copper. There's a new porphyry belt
Yeah.
there in Idaho that Barrick is now very involved in and very invested in. Um, where are you looking, and what sort of a project or projects is the right fit?
Yeah, Western US. I mean, all the states you listed are very attractive, and there are some others, like Utah. Obviously, you've got Bingham in Utah. I mean, Nevada isn't as well known for porphyries, but there are a number of copper mines in Nevada. I think
Mm-hmm.
the porphyry potential hasn't been as well explored, but it exists.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of the areas that we're looking. Not looking at New Mexico. I think we're looking at places. Our criteria for any of these projects would be that, listen, it's got to be road accessible. It's got to be on BLM land or patented, which, just ease of permitting, and that the target has to be relatively shallow. So those are the things that we'd be looking at to sort of check the boxes for at least a first pass to look at the project. And is that something that we want to take a closer look at? And again, I mean, I think, you're going to have a new regime in the US, and I think that's probably likely to be more favorable to exploration of mining, which is a plus. So again, I think if you were to look at a company like ourselves that has these advanced stage projects in BC, that they own 100%, and the claims are in good standing for a decade and have returned wonderful exploration results to provide that anchor, and then look to the Western US for some other exploration projects that you feel you can advance, more easily and on a year-round basis, and the potential prize is even bigger. I think that's something that every investor should be supportive of.
And I imagine that you're still focused on porphyry copper, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So road accessible in a good mining state in the US, near surface ore body, porphyry deposit. What else? It's got to be in a place where you can get permits easily too, right?
Yeah,
So it's got to be either private land
or BLM.
or BLM land. Yeah. So we'll exclude Forest Service for now, although you can get permitted. Just it's longer usually.
Yeah.
Um, what else is important?
Size of the prize. I mean, I think there has to be, I don't think that we want to walk into a situation where we're trying to develop a model. I think we want to have a very clear understanding of what the potential is and how it should be explored. That's another important thing. I mean, we don't want to be in a situation where it might take years to kind of get an understanding of what is the model and how are you going to attack it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and that brings me to the next question because yeah, if it takes you years to have to set the groundwork to set the table for the first drill program, well, time is money. Time is money in the junior mining sector for a public company, and that's not favorable, and investors don't like that. So it's got to be something where you can make a formidable move pretty quickly and early on in the project's life cycle. Let's talk more broadly about the junior mining sector, Blaine, and some of the challenges. I mean, I was just talking with another CEO last hour, and we were discussing how basically since 2012 the sector has been in a secular bear market. Yes, there's been some bear market rallies like in 2016 for 6 months, 2020 for 4 months, maybe even 2024 we had a rally for a few months, but generally speaking, there's been some pretty prominent headwinds across the sector. What's wrong with the sector, and how can we make it better?
Yes, well, it's certainly been challenging, and yes, I would agree that since 2012, I would think what we need to do better is actually come up with more discoveries. Companies that are actually having exploration success are still getting rewarded and they're getting the money, just like we talked about, say, American Eagle or say a Snowline. There are companies out there, or even earlier, say a Great Bear. But these discoveries are rarer and rarer. There has been a lot of money, continues to be raised and deployed for exploration, but the success ratio has just continued to decline. And you can see that, for almost any metal when you're going to pull up a 20 or 30-year sort of chart of discoveries and size. I mean, the number of discoveries has continued to decrease across all commodities, the size, the grade. So ultimately, I think really that's just going to underpin, continued higher metal prices. And ultimately, that should just continue to drive more interest into the sector. So it's getting harder, so therefore riskier, but the rewards, I think, are becoming potentially that much bigger. It's almost like a springboard. I mean, we're there now where, in almost every commodity, there's forecasted deficits, or the costs go up, the grades are going down. You think about just even gold where it is today. I mean, there aren't too many senior gold mining companies that are crushing it at these prices. And again, that's just emblematic of the challenges facing the industry as far as discoveries and costs. So I think that really helps support the prices where they are today, and prices probably have to go much higher.
One thing we haven't talked about is some of the other key players, involved with your company. I've always talked to you, and I look at your key management and your technical team, and it just blows me away. So you tell us about a couple people that are key players.
Yeah, well, I think we're very fortunate that you think about our projects, which I'm very happy with, and I'm very glad we own them, and they're in good standing for such a long period of time. But I think we've got a great technical team on the management side also. And they're backed up by a very strong technical committee. So probably one of one of the most well-recognized names on that technical committee would be Craig Hart, who's the chairman of Snowline Gold. So technically, we have not only in-house a very strong team, but independent advisors providing us with a lot of good information. So, I mean, really, the management comes up with the plans and the thesis, and it's presented to this technical committee, and they all have their own areas of expertise. So I know that whatever plan emerges from that has been very well thought out And then ultimately it's my job to access the capital for them to execute. But yeah, when I think about Pacific Ridge, I think about our team, I think about our projects. I think we're very fortunate. That may or may not be reflected in the marketplace, but I'm very pleased and happy with everything that we've done, and we're just going to keep moving forward. And ultimately, the goal is that we've got to find something that is going to create that excitement, that catalyst for share price appreciation, which is why people invest their money with us.
Yeah, 100%. Just keep moving forward, one step after the other. So final question. What kind of news flow can investors expect over the next couple months? When do you think we might hear more about one of these porphyry projects that you've been focused on in the US?
I would hope by the first quarter, by the end of the first quarter, that you would have heard something further, something definitive with respect to our plans to expand into the US. I would also hope sometime next year that we will secure either a corporate strategic investor or a senior mining company that might be willing and wanting to partner on any one of our BC projects. And I think the projects that we have, whether it's a Kliyul or an RDP or a Chuchi, warrant that strategic investment or a senior mining company wanting to joint venture. I think that they have that size and great potential to attract that. And we've heard that throughout the years. We've been talking to these seniors for a long time. And I think also that's why that ZTEM was really important. I think we've sort of demonstrated, anybody can kind of come up with their tonnage and their grades based on the drilling that we've done and the historic drilling. Then the next question is, well, how do we make it bigger? And I think we've demonstrated how you make it bigger.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. I mean, you've put some good money and some good work there um, into the KMZ area and drilled out a pretty impressive ore body. And
Yeah,
now with the ZTEM, you've shown where the expansion potential is and perhaps the vector to higher grade
yeah,
is. And that's valuable. I mean,
absolutely,
this,
absolutely.
yeah, this is valuable, and in my mind, it's worth more than $5 million. It's probably worth quite a bit more, but let's see what's out there.
Yep.
Let's see what's next for PEX on the TSX venture, and well, let's speak again in the new year, Blaine. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.